Hey, I'm Penny, and today we're going to do a completely touchable pan pastel painting that's smudge proof. Doesn't even have to be filmed behind, framed behind glass. As you can tell, I have some camera anxiety, so I'm going to switch the camera around here, grab my tea, and take you over to my art table. Look at the vibrant colors. Oh my gosh, they come in so many. That's not even a fraction of the colors. There's my messy art table. We'll get over there in a second. Let me grab my tea, my anti-anxiety tea. I'll tell you about this. I'll tell you more about this on break because I paint, I try to live healthy, and I share tips on both. This is one of the pan pastel paintings in my sketchbook, completely touchable, as you can see. This one is a pan pastel, also completely touchable. This one, another pan pastel painting. We're going to be doing a painting like that today. I'm going to turn this so I can talk to you. It's going to be a process video. So you want to grab your snacks, grab your drink, and just take a moment, sit down and chill with me and watch this video all the way through. And the reason that I say that, just watch it through the first time and then you can paint with me on the second viewing, because I'm going to be showing mistakes today. So you don't want to start trying to paint with me in this video the first time through. You want to see what those mistakes are so you don't make the same mistakes that I made in this filming of this video. Let's jump into that, and got a lot of art supplies that we're mixing. I'm going to be doing it in my sketchbook, which is a mixed media sketchbook. It is a heavyweight paper, and what I have done with this sketchbook that you're not going to see in the video is I have prepared the page by just coating it with gesso, and I also have a piece of acrylic glass behind it, acrylic plate behind it, and that just kind of helps keep anything from going through to the next pages there. But you'll see the pan pastels there and the pages prepped. Now, one thing that I did forget to do, and here's those artist mistakes, is I always gesso the page, and then I coat it with pastel grounds, and that's something that I did not do on this one, but you will see me adding that later, and I'll explain why we use pastel grounds. But what I'm doing here is I'm getting ready to start laying down the background of the pan pastels, because that's the main medium that we're starting with here, and pretty much everything's going to be done in the pan pastels, and then you'll see me doing some finishing touches in some other artistic supplies. So I'm just checking the page there just to make sure I've got the plexiglass behind it. I use that acrylic plexiglass just to keep it from bleeding through, making sure I gessoed it, and then I'm just laying down some colors here. I have the pan pastels above the sketchbook there, and I'm working with some grays. I'm just creating a background here. So, and there's the whole artist thing going on here of, you know, you hate it. It's hard for us as artists to put paint on that page sometimes. So it's that whole hesitation of it's a clean surface. So you see me kind of having that little bit of hesitation. And I'm just making some marks here for the background. The other thing you see me doing is I have a napkin, and you can use your sponges. So I'm using pan pastel sponges. I like the sponges that are made by Golden's because they're really heavy duty sponges, and you can wash them and reuse them. When you wash those sponges, they will still have color on them, so they look like they've got color on them, so you really can't tell if they've got color on them until you swipe them across a paper towel. So you'll see me using the paper towel for testing colors, but also more than anything, I'm using those paper towels to clean off the sponge so I can go into another color. And sometimes I do this really horrible thing that other artists probably hate, and that is I actually mix colors in the pan pastel itself. But when you get into an artistic flow, you know, it's just all bets are off. And for me anyway, because it's just whatever I grab, and I'm in this artistic flow. So you'll see me potentially mixing in the pan pastel palette itself. But as far as mixing, usually I'm just mixing right on the page. We're doing a light gray background here, and just kind of setting that up because we're doing a floral. So I'm going to speed this up so you can see what's going on here. Then I'm slowing it back down here so you can see how I'm starting to make these marks. What I'm doing is just getting the shape of a glass. So this is a floral, but I do have the flowers, the roses, and this is a abstract. So the roses are in a clear glass. And so I'm using the grays to define this glass here and creating that background that will show through the glass. Creating the bottom of the glass here, just making that oval at the bottom and then the top of it. And just using those sponges. I really like drawing with these sponges. You'll also see me using some of the PanPastel utensils, like this one, and laying down colors using those kind of like a paintbrush. But for the most part, I have a tendency to work in the sponges more than anything. And then you'll see in just a minute part of the process to making this so that it is a touchable piece of artwork. And I'm one of these artists that has a tendency to start details too early. Everything I've ever seen or heard from other artists is, oh, don't put in details too early. You just want to cut in shapes. You just want to get the backgrounds and stuff. And I have a really difficult time with that. So if you're one of those artists, then you're part of my tribe. But so I'm actually, kind of getting some details in here before I even get the florals into the glass, the roses. So, and on this one, another mistake that I made was I started with my light source coming from one direction and then I changed it mid-painting. So don't do that. Keep your light source coming from either the right or the left or the top or wherever you've got the light coming from. You want to stick to that. So I kind of shifted that. You can see I have the dark gray on the left side. So that would typically be my shaded area, but yet I've gone on the upper part of the background and I've put more heavy color on the right side. So that's not what you want to do. You would have your darker line on the right side of the glass to make it more, believable of a painting. But I'll fix that here in a minute. You'll see. Right now, I'm kind of working on the bottom of the glass. Again, here I go with the details, probably way too early. And I don't know why my nose is itching so bad. I guess because I'm recording a video. But yeah, so just overlook me scratching. Getting some of those shadows in there. Again, with the details. A little bit, but I really like to kind of get a feel for where things are going to be in my painting. And because I don't typically draw, I don't enjoy drawing. I enjoy color. I enjoy mixing color, putting color down on paper, putting it on the canvas. I like painting. I don't like drawing. So most of the time you'll see me doing anything that I can do to avoid drawing. Although my first art, when I first dove back into art after 20, 30 years of being an artist, I dove into commissions. I managed to fall into commissions, and they were very detailed commissions. I was doing classic automobile commissions, and so they were very detailed, and there was a lot of heavy drawing involved. And after doing several of those commissions and shipping paintings, all over the US and the world, I decided one day I don't enjoy drawing. I want to paint. So I took a step back and started to revisit what I wanted to do as an artist. You can see some of those paintings on my Instagram page, some of those commissioned cars on my Instagram page or my Facebook page. So here I am finally getting the darker shadows on the right side of the glass and the right side of the page, so that I have my light coming from the left side down. Still just working with the sponges. We'll speed this up a little bit. Really getting into those nice shadows now, bringing in some deep violet color in with the grays. We still haven't got to the florals yet, the roses. And again, these are abstract roses. I really want to be a abstract artist, but still have somewhat of a finished, what I feel like is somewhat of a understandable painting or artwork. It's a struggle. If you've ever been an artist and you used to do really detailed stuff and you're trying to move to an abstract, it seems like it's this rite of passage that we go through. So I am working. Now here you see me using one of the products that's going to make this a touchable surface. And this is Liquitex's acrylic medium, and this is matte medium. That's in this bottle here. And I have just literally coated, put a couple of drops or a line of it on the page, and now I'm using this squeegee or spatula, large painting spatula, more like a sheetrock spatula, is what I'm using to just coat the page really well. Notice how it darkens it. Anytime you apply a setting solution to pastels or pastel pencils or colored pencils, it has a tendency to darken it, and that's fine. I just plan for that. That's why I will pick lighter colors, because I know what I'm working with is going to be darker once the finished product is done. Just applying a little. Here you see me using one of the products that's going to make this a touchable surface, and this is Liquitex's acrylic medium, and this is matte medium. That's in this bottle here. And I have just literally coated, put a couple of drops or a line of it on the page, and now I'm using this squeegee or spatula, large painting spatula, more like a sheetrock spatula, is what I'm using to just coat the page really well. Notice how it darkens it. Anytime you apply a setting solution to pastels or pastel pencils or colored pencils, it has a tendency to darken it, and that's fine. I just plan for that. That's why I will pick lighter colors, because I know what I'm working with is going to be darker once the finished product is done. Just applying a little bit more here because there's some areas where it didn't really get coated, and using another tool that I have here just to make sure that area gets coated really well so I can move on to the next step in this process. Sometimes I will use a spray, which you will probably see in just a minute, called Crystal Coat, and that is the one I have found that darkens your painting the least, and I've tried several. This is an invaluable tool here if you're an artist, the wet wipes. I love these. They're 99% water. Sometimes they're a bit of a beast to get out of the package, but they're 99% water, and I use those for quick cleanups, especially when I'm in that flow mode, just wiping everything off so it doesn't get tacky and sticky, and makes it a little easier for cleanup later. Now we'll need to dry this page, so I'm just going to hit it with the blow dryer here, And that's the great thing about acrylics, is that you can, and I'm taking that wet wipe and also wiping off my plexiglass, because I have made this mistake before and not wiped off the plexiglass, and then when I'm finished, the page has stuck to the plexiglass and it rips the backing off the page. This is why you're going to see me blow drying this from the front and the back, just to make sure that it's not sticking to my plexiglass plate there. And you can see I'm rubbing my hand over it to make sure it's dry. Okay, so now we can start to work into the painting with different colors and not worry about things starting to get all mixed up. The other cool thing about PanPastels, and I forget to do this sometimes, is they're erasable. So you can make white marks but with erasers. You can literally come into it. Now you can't once you've coated it with matte medium, but you can come in and before you do that, or before you spray it with anything, and you can use an eraser and get your white areas back, which is pretty cool. Just starting with the stems here, I've got some dark green. I'm just swiping into the PanPastel palette and getting some dark greens for the stems that are going into the bottom of the glass here. This is typically how I like to work. And I love doing paintings with water and a glass. It's such a challenge for me. I think it's one of the harder things to paint, to get that look, but I don't know why. It's something that I seem to gravitate to, but I like to paint flowers in vases and try to show that whole three-dimensional look of the flowers inside that water in that jar. Creating some leaves using the end of the sponge, some greens there, some foliage. And you can see I'm cleaning off that sponge on the napkin, cleaning it off so I can dip into another color with it. I love PanPastel's vibrancy. The colors, I have not been able to find any other medium that has the vibrancy, unless you buy, neon colored paints. But really, I haven't found anything. That's why it was so important for me to be able to use PanPastels, but yet have them touchable. I just hate this whole thing of you can't touch a pastel painting because it will smudge. I don't want to create an artwork. I don't want to spend my time creating an artwork that someone could touch and ruin it, or that I could touch and ruin it just accidentally. And I have done pastel paintings where I've accidentally, rubbed my hand across it and just completely messed it up. I don't want to create artwork like that. It's too fragile. I don't want to create fragile pieces of art. I want to create art that someone can walk up to and put their hands on it and connect with it. And here you can see I've got the leaves in, so I'm doing another coat of the acrylic medium. Just again cleaning it off as I go with the wet wipes. And we'll dry this. So I'm kind of working in layers here. I'm just checking it, make sure it's dry. Okay, there you go. You can see PanPastels, touchable. Now let's get the flowers in. And here I'm using one of PanPastel's painting tools. And what this is it's just a little wand, a little plastic wand, paintbrush, almost like a palette knife. That one has the pointed tip on it, and these sponges come right off, and they're removable, and you can wash them as well too. You have to be real gentle when you wash them, but I do reuse them by washing them. And here I'm just using this tool to create some kind of abstract roses. They could really be about any flower, but I'm calling them roses because that's what I want to call them, and it's my artwork. Just using some different shades of pinks, creating those florals. Oh, you can see there the little sponge top popped off as I was rubbing it on the paper towel, so you have to be careful with that. They're a little easier torn and damaged than the sponges, the triangle shaped sponges. And yes, I have tried the makeup sponges, and they just do not work that well. I'm all about budget, and so I did try to cheap out and use the makeup sponges. Here's another mistake that I'm making in this painting. I did not coat again with grounds, and I should have, because the PanPastels are not wanting to give me that vibrant laydown of color because I haven't coated with the grounds, and the grounds is what gives you the texture that the PanPastel will adhere to. It's kind of like pastel paper, it's kind of coarse. So when you use pastel grounds, you are creating that textured surface. So I'm not getting the color hold on. I'm not getting the color variations or differentiation that I want to get in my flowers at this moment because I have not put the pastel grounds down. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to get my pastel grounds. So there it is. And we're going to apply the pastel grounds over this, and it's going to dry clear like the matte medium does, so you don't have to worry about it changing the color. Will it darken it? Just like the matte medium, it'll darken it just a little bit, but that's to be expected. And it is a common thing when I'm going through this process to coat with matte medium, dry it, and then coat with the pastel grounds. And you can see the colors coming off there. So I'm not, at this point, I'm not trying to smudge the colors as much. Now, I like the whole shadowy, kind of smudgy look. That's my abstract part of the painting. So I like the fact that it does that. I think it gives it a really cool effect. So, but here I'm really just trying to get a nice coat on there so that I can come back in and start to kind of give the flowers a little bit more of a color variation with some lights and some darks and make them much more appealing to the eye. So I'm just going ahead and putting the pastel grounds over the whole painting because at this point I realized, oh gee, you never put the pastel grounds on in the first place. Fortunately, the gesso gave it enough texture that I was able to get through the background. And just cleaning those tools off again. Like I said, these wet wipes are invaluable. In just a moment, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to share that anti-anxiety tea I showed you at the beginning. And cleaning off the plexiglass again. Each time that you coat the page, you need to clean off that plexiglass, because if you don't and you hit it with the blow dryer, it is going to stick to it. Hi, I'm brewing a cup of ashwagandha tea. And ashwagandha has some benefits for you, and it also has some side effects and precautions. We're going to talk about all that because on my channel I paint and I try to live healthy, and this is one of the try to live healthy. I am not a doctor. I do my own research, as you should do, and you should talk to your doctor before you add any new supplement to your life, because every supplement or herb has effects and side effects, just like ashwagandha does. Let's talk about those benefits. Stress and anxiety relief. So ashwagandha, it has adaptogenic properties. It means that it can lower cortisol levels and ease anxiety, potentially help improve sleep and overall cognitive function. I use it for lowering the cortisol, because if you lower cortisol, you're also going to improve issues with inflammatory problems that you may be having. So it has some anti-inflammatory effects. The root is rich in what they call cytochemicals, which may lower chronic inflammation throughout the body. Also can provide cognitive support. It can reduce athletic recovery time after a workout. Now, I do exercise, so another reason for me to keep this in my daily routine. 3, precautions. If you're pregnant, this is a no. Taking medications for thyroid disorders, diabetes, or any sedatives like benzodiazepines, this is a no. Any liver issues or pre-existing liver disease, or your liver panel's out of whack, this is a no. So these are reasons you don't want to start or add this to your routine. What does it taste like? Well, it's earthy, to say the least. It's bitter. I don't love it. It's not my favorite tea, but I drink it for the benefits. I'm one of these people that if I'm looking for the benefits, it doesn't really matter what it tastes like. For the most part, I can work with it. You can add honey or ginger to help enhance the flavor. Some people mix it with chamomile. I have a wonderful video on all the benefits of chamomile, because chamomile is an amazing tea and has some tremendous benefits. It can even be used as a tonic for your skin to help calm irritated skin and help with rosacea and eczema. So I'll drop the link to that video in the description of this one. Back to our process, we've got some really cool pan gouache paints coming up. As we continue to move through this process, and you can see how I integrate some gouache paint and some other mixed medium with this particular art piece. But right now we're going to go in and start to define our shapes a little bit and get a little bit more of the color definition into our flowers. We've got a nice textured surface now. You can see, look at those marks, how vibrant they are showing up now with the textured surface. Isn't it amazing the magic you can do when you know what supplies to use? And already our abstract floral roses are starting to kind of take shape. Isn't that just a big difference, though? You can really see the difference that starts to make. Now, just like pastel paper, you can fill up the tooth of your grounds pretty quickly, but the nice thing about it is you can apply another coat of grounds. So what you'll see here in a minute is how I make that work without smudging too much of the florals. Like I said, I kind of go for that dreamy, wispy look anyway. So I'm okay with it as I apply these different coats, giving it that hazy look. Just define the leaves a little bit more here, coming back in with the triangle sponge and the dark, the different shades of the greens. Adding some additional foliage. Those triangle sponges, I really like the way they make leaves. You can so easily create your leaves and your foliage with those. Just starting to define our hourglass there. And defining the section where the water is in the glass and the stems go down into the water. Just grabbing a little white here and touching the lip of the glass, and then I'll come down to the water, the outside rim of water, the water looking at it closest to you. One thing that I could have done here, probably should have, but it's easy to negate because the color, the pinks, are on the upper part, so I can still work with this, but it probably wouldn't have been a bad idea to go ahead and do another coat of either the pastel grounds or the matte medium before I started to shape my glass and create some details on the glass. But so when I get ready to apply the next coat of the matte medium and or the pastel grounds, I will have to be careful that I go in one direction and not pull, because I don't really want to pull the pinks down into the glass area. These are so much fun to work with. PanPastels. I keep saying I'm gonna switch back to acrylics and oils because I like to use water mixable oils. But I can't, I'm addicted to these PanPastels right now. So I keep creating these paintings in my sketchbook of the PanPastels. I'm all about textured artwork. I love anything that I can create texture on. I love the oil paintings because I do heavy texture in my oil paintings, and then when I do acrylic paintings, I paint them on block, and I use texture in my acrylic paintings as well too. So I really like art that makes someone want to touch it, and I want them to be able to touch it. That kind of has that little bit of that three-dimensional feel to it. All right, so here I am starting to put some petals, some pink petals down on the tabletop. Again, hindsight being 2020, I should have gone ahead and done a coating before I started to put these down. I should have done the flowers first and then the glass coating. It's always great when you film your artwork because you get to see the mistakes that you might have made. And there are those happy accidents that a favorite artist of mine calls them, but there's also there's things that you learn about yourself when you become a YouTube artist and you start to film your videos. You learn easier ways to do things and different ways. Being a YouTube artist is as much a creative process itself as the painting. I think that's why there's so many of us artists on YouTube. So I'm getting ready to coat this with Crystal Coat, but unfortunately I knocked my brand new can of Crystal Coat off the table and broke the sprayer, but it still works. I'm doing something you should never do here, and that is I'm spraying the Crystal Coat, which is an aerosol, inside the house. Never do this because it is very toxic, and the fumes were pretty strong, so you always want to take it outside and do it, but I was creating this video, so I was just trying to get it done. I do have a window directly behind me, so what you're not seeing in the video is that I immediately turned around and opened the window and let the breeze circulate in the room. And I have a ceiling fan on above me. But it's like 90 degrees out, so it was pulling in so much humidity I could only leave because it's so freaking hot here in the South right now this summer. And so it was pulling in so much humidity I couldn't leave the window open, but like literally like 60 seconds probably. Yes, I am in the South. I am in the coastal Carolinas. I love the little town that I live in. It's so awesome. So I've used the crystal coat, and now I'm coming back in, and this is one thing when you have your camera mounted on your table or it's touching your table. If you start to aggressively paint, it starts to shake your camera. So my camera is touching the table. That's why the video was shaking there for a second as I was aggressively rubbing the painting. This is one of those, well, this is a perfect example of knowing when to stop. I could have stopped at any given point on this painting, but I continued to work it and add additional highlights and lowlights. This is why that I say I want to be an abstract artist. I want to be painterly. If you know what being painterly is, or painterly style, it's very loose, and I cannot for the life of me get there. I keep still trying to put in lots of details instead of being able to be really loose and more abstract and more painterly. But this is definitely a different way of painting for me than the card commissions that I did. They were incredibly detailed. So this is not. Okay, here we go. I'm going to apply our matte medium again here, because I like where I'm at. I'm liking where I'm at here, but I know that when I apply this, I'm going to lose some of the things that I like, so I will have to come back. Now, I did pull that all the way down through because I have the crystal coat on there. You can see it gives it that nice little hazy, slightly smudgy effect. Some places more than what I had intended, so. Doing the lower, a good coating on the lower half here, so I can start to come in and work on that glass. I'm not trying to put an enormous amount of detail into the glass, but I do want to make the glass have that stronger appearance of it being three-dimensional, so that you can see the water in the glass as a round surface, and you can see the glass as more of a round surface instead of it just being flat two-dimensional. Cleaning that plexiglass off one more time. We'll have to hit the blow dryer here in just a second. And this is a layering process, as I said, but I think it's really worth it for getting a painting that someone can actually touch and not have to worry about framing it behind glass. Even shipping paintings framed behind glass, I hate that, because if the glass gets broken, somebody's just paid for a painting that potentially the glass broke and cut into the painting itself. So I am just not a fan of framing behind glass. If I do prints, I like to embellish my prints and sell them just matted and framed and not behind glass. Okay, so now we have pretty much kind of got things the way I want it here in this painting, but I still need to, or I want to, I feel like I need to come back in and do some work on that glass to give it that more round three-dimensional look. So I'm going to use some pastel pencils here, And pastel pencils work great with PanPastels to come in and bring out highlights or lowlights because they're pastel and the grounds are on there. The pastel grounds is on the paper, so the pastel pencils will work really well on this particular type of project because you've already laid down the grounds, which is that textured paper. I'm just using white here to come in and get some effects of the rim of the glass and the water line. So that really looks like that those plants are, that the stems of the roses are behind the glass and that they're underneath the water. Even though it's an abstract painting. Oh. Now I'm just going to add some shadows in the background. Again, at any point here, I could have probably stopped with this painting, and this is a lesson for artists out there. You know when to stop, know when to be finished. There are some things just looking at it now, hindsight, because this is a voiceover. If you haven't already figured that out, I am talking speaking to the art that I have already created, but so it's a voiceover, and I can actually see there's some areas that probably could use some more work, but I think as artists we are always looking at a piece of art and saying that. So what I have here is some gouache paint. This is white gouache. So why? Because I wasn't happy with the pastel pencils. They weren't giving me the vibrancy of that I really wanted to see on this glass. Now, here we go, getting underneath the camera, and so the camera's trying to focus on me instead of the artwork. So this is one of those artist mistakes. A filming mistake. I've clearly got my head all the way under there so that I can see what I'm doing. So just bear with me. It'll pull back out and refocus here in just a second, and you can actually see the painting. But what I'm just doing an up close and personal. Completely forgot. I'm so involved in my painting here that I completely forgot that I was in the way of the camera. So even as a YouTuber, we do crazy, stupid things. And I have filmed several YouTube videos, so I should know better than that, but obviously I didn't catch myself. This is, again, being in the flow of your art, but you can see how I used the white there and really started to give that some definition of the top rim of the glass, and then the water level there in the center of the glass. Gouache is a wonderful paint to come in and do any type of highlights like this, or low lights in or mixing mediums, especially if you're working with acrylic. Now I'm using some gouache here, and using a water-filled pen. This is the Caran d'Ache from Geneva, Switzerland. They make some fantastic products. I love everything they make. And so I'm just also doing some highlights and lowlights. Again, this is an abstract painting, and here I go adding details, more details, more details. Oh my gosh, heaven help me with the details. But yeah, so but anyway, you can certainly do that. That's why I wanted to keep this in the video. I wanted you to see how you can mix the gouache paint and layer it over top of your pan pastels. Now I have the crystal coat on there, and then I have the acrylic medium, and then the grounds are still underneath a little bit, but I'm just giving a little bit more detail that I felt like I lost in the roses when I used the wedge and did the last coating of the acrylic medium. And adding just a little bit of low lights, dark lights to the petals that are on the tabletop there. The one reason that I love these gouache paints here is because they're in a pan. Most gouache paints you'll see are in tubes, and I'm not a huge fan of working with tube paint, although I do when I do water mixable oils. But these gouache paints are so nice to travel with because they're in that pan, and you can just re-wet them very easily. It's better if you just spray them before you start painting with them, but they make a great travel paint set. Just doing some low lights and highlights on the leaves. Also using the gouache paint to define the stems a little bit more and the leaves a little bit more. I guess these are more rose buds, abstract rose buds, than they are full blossom roses. It's more of a glass of rose buds. But again, it's abstract, so. Just adding some final touches here. And then once this is dry, I will do a final coat of matte medium.